Okay. Doing the thing.
Doing the thing.
How you doing?
Okay, spoilers. In what's coming up in this video that you're watching right now, I'm going to express some big ideas about morality, decision making, all of these things, and it's going to get uncomfortable. And what's great is, so right now it's the middle of the night. Obviously, you can kind of tell that. And I usually don't record in the middle of the night, but I'm editing. This is when I edit videos and do production work a lot of the time. And um, what I'm seeing, this is like almost a month after that video was recorded. What I'm seeing is this discomfort, and I'm seeing it through the context of like another month of training. And Aaron is still with us, committed as ever, is hard as shit, and is just like basically sticking with the process of dealing with uncomfortable ideas. And it is the context, the starting point for Aaron being here as Uchideshi, Uchideshi meaning living student, is that Aaron knows that you know having wound up in a series of dangerous situations means that something has to change, right? And so Aaron is like super open to learning and expanding and growing and is not shutting any ideas out. And what you're seeing right now is a video from the first week of training, but editing is happening much later, right? So a couple of weeks of training have gone by. Aaron is actually out right now on a little mini Musho Shugyo. She's actually in Oregon, having visited the sister dojo in Durango. You're gonna have to keep watching the series to see those videos. Um, but uh, but yeah, so these uncomfortable issues that are going to come up that you're going to see in the rest of this video, we're working through that actively right now because they're really big ideas, and these ideas are very foundational. They end up, for a lot of people, they touch their identity, which people build their whole lives on their identity way more than on like basic needs. It's the weird thing about Maslow's hierarchy is once you've touched the top, everything below it doesn't matter. That's a whole nother video. But the point is, what you're about to watch is a progression of thoughts, and I just want everybody who's watching this saying like, oh, she's getting uncomfortable. I want you to know that this is me a month later. We're still training. We're still going hard. Aaron is a badass, and we're in it for the long haul. I mean, anything could happen from here on out. I want to acknowledge that this is going pretty well. I have absolute faith in this process, and please stay tuned because this is going to be some awesome shit. That's it. Peace.
I'm doing.
So you learned Pinan 1 on Tuesday and had some diagnostic sparring.
Yep.
And then yesterday we had class and you did diagnostic sparring with 3 other new students. We had 2 instructors. How do you feel in all the ways? Just how do you feel?
Yeah. Physically, I feel a little sore, The pain in my knee didn't stick around, which was good. I was a little concerned about that, but that feels good. Mentally, I feel both deeply fatigued from just the territory that I've been in the last few weeks, and I think expelling that kind of energy in that sort of like dance fight, really intense way, almost like not quite released, but I think just allowed me to be like, oh, I'm tired, like, which I think I need because I can definitely be someone who will like push myself and push myself and push myself. So just a good reminder. But I feel really like proud of myself. And I was reflecting last night on the classes that I have avoided doing something like this in the past for many reasons, but like I really realized that I thought I would never be good at anything like this, or like that I could improve. Well, I think, so part of the avoidance that I've had in participating in some kind of self defense class is feeling like I can never improve. Like I'll never improve, and I'm just going to get stuck in frustration and in sort of the inability to be really coordinated. And I don't know why. Like I've had that thought that's not a thought, right? It's sort of integrated into my actions. And in practicing and showing up to the classes and doing things over and over again, it was like so powerful for me to see that I can move beyond the, I mean, not that I'm like beyond the awkward, weird, I don't know what I'm doing phase, but just that it's like, oh, it's like slightly better. Like I can improve. And that has just been really on my mind since the last class. So.
There's a very normal thing with, I mean, it comes in a few subtle variations that are meaningfully different. Frequently, people have a concern about getting things right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is obviously not limited to martial arts schools. People are very concerned with having the correct answer. I obviously want to blame the industrial schooling model for this, convincing people that right answers are the same in kind in every different kind of subject, which is just not true. Like arithmetically, trying to catch a mosquito without spilling your coffee. That's fun. Arithmetically, there's a single correct, elegant answer for every simple arithmetical question. Yeah, just try to eat in my pants, why don't you? 2 plus 2 does equal 4, but 2 plus 2 also equals 3 plus 1. It's a correct answer, but it's not an elegant answer, and that's something that gets left out a lot. And thinking about what are right and wrong answers is, even in the single epistemological sense, which for the little side pull out, epistemology is the study of ways of knowing. Yeah. It's a very important concept that ways of knowing things can be studied, and there's more than one epistemological frame. And in the epistemological frame where we come the closest to having singular correct answers, which is arithmetic, there are only singular correct answers if we include incorrect elegant, meaning simplest possible answer. 2 plus 2 equals 4 is the simplest possible correct answer to what is 2 plus 2, like what does 2 plus 2 equal. But there are actually infinite correct answers to what does 2 plus 2 equal, because obviously 2 plus 2 equals 3 plus 1, which is just another expression. Those are both expressions. And if that's correct, then also 2 plus 2 equals, 4 plus 0, or 5 minus 1, or, and then if you just play that out in your head, obviously that's infinite. It's an infinite number of correct answers. In the one way of knowing things that we have that is closest to having singular correct answers. Every other way of knowing anything has less of a discrete correct answer. And in the one way that has the most discrete correct answers, there's still infinite correct answers.
Yeah, right.
There are always more incorrect answers than correct answers, because 2 plus 2 does not equal 5 plus 8.
Yeah.
It's way off, right? There are way, way more incorrect answers, even though there's an infinite number of correct answers. And this might seem like a weird tangent from martial arts, but actually it is incredibly essential when we think about martial arts, self-defense, safety, strategy, tactics. There's this thing where, I tell people all the time, martial arts, combat, both military and paramilitary sciences are obligate hierarchy. You are obliged to form a hierarchy if you want to succeed in these.
Obligatory
hierarchy? It's an obligatory hierarchy, yeah. Okay. Or they are obligate hierarchies would be actually.
Good way to say that.
This is actually another expression of there are multiple correct answers. Some of them are more elegant than others.
Sure.
But one of the biggest reasons that there are obligate hierarchies is that they're like, if you know, it's really funny because one of the first conversations I had with somebody about this that went really in depth, we used Star Trek as a reference point. Captain Picard makes a lot of actually, there's a very strict pattern for how he makes military decisions. But the show, because in the show they're trying to keep the audience engaged and entertained, Captain Picard makes a lot of very novel military snap judgments, and his team, generally speaking, except when the breakdown that they're framing the episode around has to do with an internal breakdown, the team generally just executes immediately. But it's supposed to be in the society that's actually very, very egalitarian, but still has a distinct hierarchy. And what's the reason for that? The reason is that if you stop to have a kind of a democratic process and try to achieve the best answer, assuming that was feasible, it would make you very predictable, which would make that best answer a terrible answer because you're in a fight, with somebody else. And so trying to come to the singular correct answer and people do this all the time, they're looking back and like, what should General Patton really have done in this case and whatever. And it's just like, cool, you can argue about that for 10 years, argue about the snap judgment that somebody made, in the span of 10 seconds, and argue about what the best, answer would have been. But even if you come to a defensible conclusion, like, that would mean that any opposing force could develop a framework around how that defensible conclusion was come to, and they would defeat you every time. And so this is, in conflict, having a certain degree of spontaneity and unpredictability is very important. Now, how do you do that when you're having conflict in a group? Well, it means somebody has to be in charge, because everybody has to be able to, in a very timely manner, generally instantaneously, carry out the will of a single mind. Otherwise, you're too slow and you lose. And so the hierarchy of both military and paramilitary organizations, ding, what's the difference between military and paramilitary? Military generally has to do with external conflicts, and paramilitary, this is not the strictest definition, but this is like a way of very easily dividing what is military and paramilitary. Paramilitary usually deals with internal crises and problems. So that's emergency medicine, fire, police. Those are paramilitary organizations. There are other paramilitary organizations, including things like the Boy Scouts. All of these organizations depend for their function on a type of hierarchy that is actually an integration of minds. It's not a hierarchy for the sake of control and enslavement per se, and in fact, actually, those sorts of hierarchies tend to lose in conflicts. It's a hierarchy of delegation and integration of thinking and communication and ideas, and it generally has very discrete openings and closings of that that hierarchical container. Where, at the closing, people go back to being individuals, and at the opening, people integrate into a whole. And the degree to which that whole has integrity, is an integer, is a single entity. The degree to which that is done is the limiting factor on the success in the conflict with an opposing whole. So this all came out of the fear of not being correct. If we believe in correct answers, it limits our ability to form a complete whole with other people. Because another person will say, this nominally the person in charge says, we're going that way, and you see a reason to go that way. And if you genuinely believe in singular correct answers in general, that creates an internal conflict that breaks down the whole. And that breakdown in the whole means that military unit or that paramilitary unit can't be as effective as any opposing unit that has the ability to make effectively arbitrary decisions. Arbitrary decisions, as bizarre as it might sound, are at the heart of like the art of war. Making decisions that, and when I say arbitrary, I don't mean random. I mean, so things that are arbitrary are things that can be arbitraged, things that can be exchanged. So we could say that one apple is as good as one pear, but probably one apple isn't as good as one pebble in most markets, right? So a pear and an apple might be easily arbitraged. If I have a lot of pears and you have a lot of apples and we want to have a good mix, those can be arbitrarily exchanged and we can both come out a winner. But if I have a pocket full of pebbles and you have a bushel of pears, like you probably don't give a shit about my pocket full of pebbles if we're being realistic.
Kind of depends.
I mean, if you need a pebble, you need a pebble.
Well,
but
they're like pretty, or
some
you never
pebbles
know.
are pretty.
They
I get
could
that.
be-
That's why I say probably.
That's
In most
a
cases,
spectrum.
people are hungry. They want to make pie. You don't want to make pebble pie. Like, it might be nicer to have some pear tarts and some apple tarts. That's nicer than having some pear tarts and some pebble tarts. In most people's taste, I think this is a pretty defensible assertion, right? And so, arbitrary doesn't mean random. It doesn't mean everything is equal. It means there are objective constraints that any different decision can be made within, and it can be valid, and you can leverage the fact that lots and lots of different decisions could be made. You can see this coming up in self-defense because, like, when you get into that clinch type situation, you have the option of going for the drag down or the throw or breaking and trying to get a good strike in as you separate, and then maybe make a re-entrance for maybe a better throw because you created this distraction or created the impression that you want to disengage. Right? There are lots of ways to play that, and the fact that there are lots of ways to play that and all of them can work if the execution is sound. It really comes down to the execution being greater than the decision. And when a person, and I see this all the time in discussions about martial arts, about which martial art is better than the other, which fighter is better than the other, and it's just like, well, what day of the week is it? That's not it's not a good question. Which martial art is better? The one you train in a lot. That's the best martial art. The one you've put in years with is always going to be the best system for you. You can pick any system, and make it work. I've had experiences with people who practice systems that people think are like very silly martial arts. Obviously, there's a limit to this. Like I said, constraints. If you try to learn Ameradote from a web series, you're going to lose a fight, every fight, with anybody who knows what they're doing. Ameradote is a joke martial arts from a YouTube web series. But you can use Aikido really well. You can use these, capoeira, things that people think are invalid. People have won professional fights with capoeira. And, it doesn't happen very often, and there are reasons for that. Really, they don't matter right now. But execution is always greater than the arbitrary decision. But people spend a lot of time trying to be right. And the only way to get out of that, it's not a matter of just understanding that execution is what matters. It's every single instance of wanting to have the right answer. We have to confront that in ourselves. Every time we want to say, like, oh, was that the right thing to do in a singular context? Like, did I make the right call? We have to confront that in ourselves and recognize that that's not a thing. And what is a better question in every case is, like, which is not to say you can't make there are also wrong calls, but what is a superior question is, how did I execute? How was my performance? And it seems like a really subtle distinction, but it makes all the difference. Is that helpful? It's a long rant, I know, but was it helpful?
I mean, I think my relationship with this idea of, like, growing up where it's like, okay, yeah, you really have this stark, this is good and this is bad behavior, things, places, all of those things. And as I grow in myself, I'm really recognizing how much of that is just a spectrum and like what even really is good and bad. But then
Well,
I
it's
think that
interesting.
there's like,
You go on.
oh, you
Sorry.
go ahead.
I was going to say, I think good and bad are totally real things. I
I
think it's
think,
bad to violate people's consent.
sure, yeah.
It's bad. Right?
But it's like, how are we agreeing culturally that something is good versus bad? And what does that actually mean? Because, for example, in America, it's like bad to not leave a tip. But in other countries, it's like bad to leave a tip.
Right.
So it's like, I guess I'm just speaking more to the spectrum that you do have to feel into from the group of people that you are in relationship with. And whether that is like someone you are fighting, yourself, an animal, whatever. It's like it feels very much like there's a force that you're feeling into that
Yeah.
informs all of that,
For sure.
and that you're sort of responding
Yeah.
from that place.
It may be the case. I'm going to offer this.
Okay.
That a principal mistake that people make is thinking of the wrong things as good and bad. This is just oversimplifying good and bad. And this is why you may notice that I frequently I'll even correct other people when they say something is bad. Usually it's bad, but it's also good, because like good and bad are moral.
Absolutely.
Like we are best served to only ever think of things as good and bad when they have a moral quality. Um, Culture, like tipping is cultural. It's not good or bad. There's nothing good or bad about tipping. It's just like it is a cultural decision. Now, cultural decisions come out of trends that have to do with morality. So there are histories of people doing things that established, that there's a backstory to anything, right? And there are decisions that were made along the course of that backstory. Some of those decisions had a moral quality, right? So tipping can be a great example, but if we want to go to a more extreme example that I think might make it easier to see is getting a liver transplant, or giving someone a liver transplant. Is any part of a liver transplant bad? Like if I sign my donor card and I get in a car accident and my liver's not damaged and somebody else gets my liver, did someone make a moral error there? As I'm actually asking.
I don't know.
Really?
I mean, I'm thinking of this story that I just read where, so in this case, probably not. Like, that's a good thing to do. That's like,
There are three actors here. There's a
Yeah.
doctor doing the transplant, there's a
Yeah.
person giving their liver, and this person receiving the liver. So are any of those three people engaging in something evil?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay. Well, what was the story you read?
So there was a man recently whose mother passed from Alzheimer's, and so he donated her body to science and was really hoping that her brain would go to Alzheimer's research.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And really affected him. And he found out that they ended up utilizing her body to basically, they tied her body to a chair and they did a military experiment where they like blew her up. And he was like incredibly devastated because it's like his mother, this like person who like birthed him and raised him, and then he like saw her pass away, and so nothing was used in the way that he was hoping that it would.
Right, but that goes back to the first statement.
Yeah.
It's wrong to violate consent.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Like that wasn't the agreement.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Now, this comes back to the execution piece. Is it sounds like, and I just happen to know this because of how those kinds of donation agreements generally work.
Sure.
There's probably a really low fidelity agreement, which is to say, it wasn't very articulate. So if he just said, "Yeah, you can use my mother for science," and made the assumption, sometimes people make agreements through like implications and assumptions and things like that, and people can still be doing things wrong, but a lot of what is wrong sometimes is a matter of people not communicating well, and that part is not wrong. It's just poor execution, right? When people just don't communicate their interests, desires, boundaries, expectations with any degree of clarity, and they make an agreement with a lot of really sloppy language, that's poor execution. Now, poor execution in communication is, I think, mostly something that exacerbates poor moral decisions. So I would say no matter how poor the execution on the part of the son or the family was, it was wrong for the military to blow this woman up.
Mm-hmm.
Because any competent person could look at that proposal and be like, this probably isn't what the family had in mind. We should call them.
Mm-hmm.
This is definitely phone call worthy. Like, hey, you gave your mother up for scientific research. There's a military research. We think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
Is this okay with you? Like, when there's, and this is how we fix, poor communication, is we ask questions, right? Like, so I would say that kind of negligence to do something that, I think any reasonable person would have guessed, like, this is in that gray area. Because if you're coming from the military perspective, they probably thought the experiment was worthwhile and important, right? But if you can't empathize with other people enough to realize, other people probably have a different experience of the world and different values and priorities, and probably don't want to just know that their mom got blown up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a pretty normal, reasonable human set of interests. Like, I should call this person first and check with them. Like, if you can't do that, then you're a shitty person and you're doing things that are wrong, right? I don't know. What do you think? I'm ranting again.
Mm. I don't know. I think I need to
You want to sit with that one?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I brought up the liver transplant example is that the history of liver, we could not possibly have liver transplants at all if it weren't for the scientific research of Himmler. There was a big gulf. Like, we essentially, somebody, in order to have organ transplants, somebody had to do a bunch of research on how to keep people alive during surgeries that, for all of our scientific knowledge, we knew would definitely kill them, right? Which meant we had to take a bunch of people who weren't definitely going to die imminently and kill them on purpose to get all of the measurements of when blood pressure dropped when we did different things, and when all the stuff, and it needed to be a lot of people to get really good numbers and to find the best procedures. That was the only way to create the procedures for organ transplants. And Himmler was an awful person, and he was an awful person for doing that, right? And so then the question becomes, do we throw away everything that was learned because an awful person did it I'm not going to even speculate on his reasons. I don't think his reasons really matter. He was a fucking terrible person. He might have had some kind of long vision. He maybe didn't even hate Jews. He might have just straightforwardly been like, this is worth it for humanity, and I'll pretend to hate Jews because that'll get me Hitler's permission to experiment on a bunch of people. And this is a once in a millennia opportunity to do some horribly sadistic shit that's going to save people's lives for hundreds and hundreds of years. That might have been his line of reasoning. I still think it's wrong for him to do what he did. But I would also think that it's wrong for us to throw away everything that we understand now because of what he did. Because then we're just not helping people with the information that we have. And so, yeah, history's complicated, but I think what's right and wrong isn't super complicated. It's is somebody telling you, no, I don't want you to cut my liver out? Is someone just not telling you, yes, you can cut my liver out while I'm still alive? If no one's saying, yes, that's cool for science, then it's wrong to do it. Right and wrong is super simple. But ethics, the professional application of right and wrong, and history, which is just, the story of all the different things that people have done, I think those things get complicated. But I think right and wrong are super simple. But all the circumstances, tipping, it's the way tipping began was to enforce a socioeconomic hierarchy,
Right.
Really exploitatively.
Yeah.
But now we live in a society where there are a bunch of laws that exist,
Mhm.
right? And restaurant owners don't get to change those laws or the economic constraints of the hospitality industry, right? An individual restaurant owner can't affect those things. And so an individual restaurant owner, um, in most circumstances, has the option to take a big risk and do something avant-garde, and maybe all of their employees just don't have a job because that avant-garde thing in a really highly competitive industry um, is too big a risk business-wise, or go along with tipping and go along with what the culture is doing, regardless of how it began. And it's, like, the stakes are way lower, but it's the exact same as a liver transplant.
Mm.
It's like when you go out to a restaurant, you should tip because that's where we live. How we got here, it's messy. It's history. History's messy,
Yeah.
but I don't know. So this is me being, I don't know, very, I don't know, very, like, sounding very certain about things that it seems like one should not be super certain about. But I think that are, I think there are some things that are very simple, and some other things that are very complex that people, um, like, that do get way dicier. Like, is it wrong for a restaurateur, like, some burger restaurant, I forget what it is, some like fast food burger restaurant, like, raise their prices a bunch, but they don't allow tipping. But they're also, most of their competition don't have tipping to begin with, right? Because it was like a fairly fast burger place. But what they got to do was launch a marketing campaign that they're very humanitarian, so people feel good about themselves while they're going to get milkshakes, which is something that people frequently don't feel good about doing. So it actually was a huge marketing play for them, right? So this is the thing with the strategy. His strategy, we look at the constraints and we try to make novel and interesting decisions in order to, create unexpected outcomes. And there are moral components. Strategy is complicated. I think right and wrong. I think people overthink it, and by overthink it, I mean think badly about it. You know. Okay, I'm done ranting on that. You say things. What are you thinking?
Well, I think it's making me think of performance, how we perform for ourselves and the world at large. And I suppose the way I'm thinking of that is if I have a certain orientation around what is good or bad, and then I have the desire to perform like perfectionism for others because that relates back to how I'm experiencing good and bad, like that's a bit interesting to me. Does that?
Can you give me an example?
Well, I'm trying to think of one that would like relate to the dojo.
It doesn't have to. Obviously, I'm talking about liver transplants and tipping and
Sure.
burger joints. So, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe this isn't the best example, but it makes me think of like dancing. Like when you go out to dance, I think sometimes there can be this very like performative piece. You are performing, and there's like an energy that you can feel into where it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this thing because it like makes me look a certain way, and then you're sort of accepted, or there's like a response to that particular like movement that has an effect, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we can sort of check in with ourselves and move from that place of performance. And because I don't think, I think performance is a really powerful tool. Nice. But I think it draws back into like authenticity and what is it to be authentic? Like, is it possible to have like what is your actual true beliefs and yeah, like orientation to good and bad. Like, who are you really at the end of all things? Like, and I guess it's making me wonder too of like how this um, like performance could potentially relate to some of the things that we're experiencing with others. Like, I think in the context of like the dojo, you know, there's like agreements, right, that are made and set, and it's like bad to break those agreements. And then it's like, do we want to help people to make us feel good, or is it to help them? Like, where are those things like in alignment? And I don't know. I feel like my thoughts are like very jumbled today, but yeah,
Cool. That's okay.
we
It's
can
okay
cut
to
that.
have jumbled
Cut that
thoughts.
all.
I think we can leave it. I mean, I think we'll edit. We'll figure out how to edit all of this.
It's
But
fine.
what I would offer is that I think everything you just said is a constellation
Yeah.
of lines of thinking. Oh, you're not a mosquito. Sorry. It's a constellation of lines of starting points, trailheads, right? So there are a bunch of trailheads that could be very productive paths. And maybe all those trailheads start at the same parking lot where somebody's having a tailgater and it's really noisy. I don't know. But basically, you're like pointing to all of these related things. Like, here's something that's related, here's something that's related, here's something that's related. I think all of those things are valuable. And even if we cut all of that out, all of this out, it might be really worthwhile to go back and look at that later on in this series and explore each of those trailheads individually and bring them back, because I actually do think that they're all relevant. I think it's a good place.